Hello, and thanks for joining me once again. You know, sometimes I look back over my Nightscape photography journey and I actually pinch myself to make sure it's all been real. I mean, I've had such amazing adventures throughout so many years now. And of course, I've put an enormous amount of work into preparing myself and my equipment to hopefully, set myself up for the best chance of success when going out to shoot. But as you all know, there are things, plenty of things beyond our control that can easily spoil a party. And I'm no different to any of you in that regard. I've actually had my fair share of cloudy nights and windy conditions, sometimes just old plain bad luck. But on the whole, I'd say I've had plenty more wins than losses. So it's been a while since I've actually been out to shoot. We've had lockdowns and travel restrictions, and more recently, a full moon to contend with. So yesterday, I checked out the weather forecast and it was looking quite bad for the next week or so, with heavy rain and thunderstorms predicted. But last night was going to be clear and calm, so I thought to myself, right, I'm going out to shoot. The moon wasn't going to rise until after midnight, and the Milky Way galactic core was in a great position setting into the western sky. So my next question was, where will I go to shoot? Often when asking this question, especially if I haven't been out scouting any new spots, I'll think back to places where I've shot before. And one such spot is the Cairn Curran Reservoir, which is actually pretty close to where I live, and it's a nice dark location with easy access. I knew the water level had risen a lot since I'd last visited, and that meant I'd be able to get a different composition to the last time. Now, you've seen me visit this lake many times in the past, but I think it's good to go back to favourite locations, especially when you've had good success there previously. Now, the spot I chose was on the eastern side of the lake, as I wanted to shoot towards the west and feature two beautiful old dead trees overlooking the water. Now, as I mentioned, the water level was actually much higher, and I reckon this would make for some interesting photography. So now I was set, I'd chosen my spot, the weather was looking perfect, my batteries were charged, all I needed to do was pack the car and wait for the sun to set. Everything was going to plan, and as I headed out to the lake, I could clearly see the bright planet Venus setting in the sky just below the Milky Way galactic core. And I remember thinking to myself how good the reflection of that planet would look in the water. So, as I travelled along the rough old dirt road to my location, I could actually see some fresh tyre tracks leading into the lake. Now, this didn't bother me too much because this is actually a pretty popular spot for fishing and sightseeing. And sure enough, as I rounded the last twist in the road, I could see some torchlight at the place where I wanted to shoot. Now, at first I stopped the car because I actually thought that if there were other Nightscape photographers there, I didn't want to interrupt their shooting. I could actually see the torchlight hitting the dead tree in the water, and to me it looked a bit like someone was actually light painting the tree. At this point I turned off the car headlights completely and very slowly drove along the track and parked the car just nearby. Now, to be honest, I was thinking that I'd go over and say hello to whoever was shooting at this spot. I mean, who knows, I may even know them. So I got out of the car and started approaching one of the people I could see there in the darkness. And then it hit me. These guys weren't photographers at all. They were fishermen. The light I'd seen on the tree was simply someone's headlight spilling all over the place. I could hear a radio blaring away in the darkness, and actually as my eyes got more accustomed to the dark, I could see lights all along the shore of the lake. I couldn't believe it. There were at least a dozen of them or more swarming all over the place. My heart sank. I knew by now that all my planning and work up to this point was in vain. There was no way I'd be shooting at this spot tonight. Now, as I made my way back to the car, I noticed the car parked just ahead of me, and I tell you what, my heart took another quick beat. It was the same car I'd seen here about 18 months ago when faced with a similar situation with fishermen flooding my Nightscape shooting location and staying till well after midnight. Man, oh man, I just could not believe it. Now, you may remember the video where I talked about that experience. It wasn't as bad last time, as it was much earlier in the season, and so I had plenty of time to shoot after they left. This time, however, I knew the time to capture the call with Venus underneath was actually going to be quite limited. So as I drove away from that spot, my mind was racing. Where would I go now? I mean, I do have quite a few favourite spots at this lake, but many of them are actually on the wrong side of the lake to get the composition that I was after. It was at this point that I actually contemplated something I've never actually done before. I considered the option of packing up and just heading home. In all the years of shooting Nightscape images, I've never actually done that, especially when the sky was so clear and the conditions were just so good. I guess it comes down to a state of mind. How was I going to handle the disappointment of missing out on shooting at the spot I had my heart set on? What do you do when you don't have a plan B? So my mind was in a spin, I guess. And in fact, I actually turned my car around and headed back towards home. But you know, I was conflicted. I really wanted to get a shot. It had been so long since I'd been out, and this is a problem. Suddenly, my motivation for going out was in question. Did I actually want to go out and shoot because it was something I really enjoyed doing? Or was it because I really needed some content to put into a video? In fact, this video. Now, wow, that was a real light bulb moment. Now, you guys know I've talked about this before. This YouTube channel, like every other channel, needs regular content to keep the numbers turning over. What I've found is that if you go a few weeks without uploading a video, the audience for the channel drops off considerably. And it's a really tough job to build it back up again. So all of this is running through my head as I'm driving along. But then as I pondered the options, I thought to myself, no, I'm an hour away from home. There must be some other spots close by that I could shoot something. And I tell you what, if you were following me along the road that night, you'd be wondering what the clown in front of you was doing, stopping and starting and parking on the side of the road. Anyway, I turned around and decided to drive along a familiar stretch of road and just see if it triggered anything regarding subject matter for shooting nightscapes. And guess what? It sure did. I stumbled upon an old dead tree right alongside the road. Now, I already knew it was there, and I guess my subconscious brain clicked into gear. A fair amount of time had passed by this stage, however, and look, Venus was now getting quite close to the horizon. But I started clicking off some frames, and I suddenly felt good again. At least I was capturing something. Having the camera in hand was exactly what I'd needed all along. And you can see that I only shot single exposures here. And I must say, I found it quite liberating to keep the process simple. I hardly ever shoot single exposures these days, but it did seem to fit the moment quite well this time. The funny thing about this situation was that I was now in an area I'd shot many times before, and a few other locations just came to mind in an instant. I was on a roll. So my next stop was about 10 k's down the road, an old windmill that I'd shot a few times before, but that's not always a bad thing. I knew this would be another great spot to get my creative energy rolling again. This location highlights for me the reason I love getting out to shoot the night sky. Beautiful clear skies, an interesting foreground, and hardly any wind. I spent quite a lot of time here, and regardless of the photography, I just felt so good being out there under the stars. By now it was getting pretty late. I was a fair distance from home, so I headed off down the road, wondering if there would be any more last-minute locations worth considering. Now, at this time of the year, there's an abundance of amazing canola crops all along the roadways here in Australia. And in the back of my mind, I was hoping to find a spot to feature this view. It actually didn't take long at all. I found a lovely old gum tree right on the roadside with a paddock full of canola all around it in behind. And I reckon this could be the composition I've been searching for. So there you have it. A bit of a ramble really about my own personal experience. You know, it could so easily have gone the other way. I could have gone home without a single image. So it just goes to show that this nightscape photography thing is as much about our attitude and how we actually think as to what we actually do. I hope this encourages you to get out there under the night sky and landscape. Push through the barriers and find that place where your heart and soul collide. The end result could well be a creative masterpiece, and you know, at the very least, you'll have a peaceful night out admiring the awesome view. All right, well, thanks a lot for watching, guys. I'd love for you to like this video and perhaps even consider subscribing to the channel. I'll be looking forward to seeing you next time, so until then, you have a fantastic week.